yokai based on Scottish mythology? Aren't yokai Japanese? Well, yes. In Yokai Watch, the majority of yokai designs that appear are based on Japanese myths, as their name would suggest. Regular yokai tend to be loosely based on the concept of yokai, while some are specifically based on existing yokai like Tengu or Kyubi. Then there's classic yokai, which are literally just real yokai from mythology. But the yokai type I want to draw attention today is the American yokai. American yokai are based on American stereotypes and not any specific real yokai. So, as a major Yokai Watch fan and a Scot, I've decided to create my own class of yokai, the Celtic yokai, which features yokai based on the myths and legends of the Celts that inhabited Scotland and Ireland. I made a custom class tag, as you see right here, and a brand new medal type to go with these yokai, which I will be using for the designs throughout the video. Hello everyone and welcome back to Azzatron 5000. My name's Aaron, I'm your host, and today we are going to be delving into my creations of yokai based on Scottish mythology. I recently drew myself as a yokai and blended the Scottish myth of the ghillie doo into my design, so why don't I just shift the hue of that medal to yellow, and there we go. Now I gotta make 8 yokai to fill my medallion. How this is going to work is this video is split into 2 parts. This part is going to have 4 yokai to fill half of the seals, and then next week's video is going to have the other 4. We got that? Okay, cool, let's get started. For our first yokai, we're going to visit the Minch, a space of water between the Outer Hebrides and mainland Scotland. The particular myth I'm going to draw from here is the appropriately named Blue Men of the Minch. This tale tells of humanoid men with bright blue skin and long beards that appeared during storms. They were said to approach ships and tell the captain lines of poetry. If the captain failed to answer correctly, the blue men would attempt to capsize their ship. For this yokai, I wanted to do a slightly different take and kind of draw inspiration from the kids in a trench coat trope. The blue men will be small, sprightly yokai that, whilst weak on their own, band together to form the shape of the men from the myths, alongside amplifying their power to create ravaging storms. Allow me to introduce you to Minchkin. Instead of green beards usually described in folktales about the Minch, I gave him a green mohawk so that when they form into a group, the Minchkin hanging upside down can use their hair to give the impression of a beard. For his medallion page here, I gave him the Charming tribe and a C ranking, alongside a skill that boosts his spirit when linked with other Minchkin in battle. On their own, they're weak, but when the Minchkin band together, they create powerful storms that ravage ships in their wake. Here's his yokai medal, and that about wraps up our first creation. Next, I want to mention something about this series of videos. I've made the 4 yokai that appear in each video sort of counterparts to each other. There will be a smaller C rank yokai based on a more obscure myth, an A rank yokai based on a well-known myth, a shadow side S rank yokai, and finally, a pair of Jibanyan and Komasan variants. Now, I know what you're going to say. We have enough of those already, and I do agree, but when American yokai were introduced, many yokai were given American counterparts, like Jibanyan, Komasan and Komanjiro being contrasted by Tomnyan and the Koma Nomads. So, whilst I wasn't fully sold on this idea at first, I discovered a pair of myths known as the Kusith and Catsith, which, as being cats and dogs, are perfect to base Jibanyan and Komasan variants on. And with that, it's time to work on our Catsith Nyan. For this one, we need to head into the Scottish Highlands. The Catsith was described as a black spectral cat with a glowing white spot on its chest that was believed to be able to steal souls. It supposedly reared up onto its hind legs and walked around as a biped when it believed no one was watching. From my interpretation of a yokai based on this, I started with an all black Nyan Modi, but decided to make it look as if it was made out of smoke. Originally, the design featured exclusively one white spot on his chest, but I later decided to add some white swirls along the body too for a little more visual interest. Sithnyan is a B rank yokai of the Ire tribe, with Shadow Venot's skill Secrecy to add to the idea that he tries to remain hidden. A rare cat yokai that appears in towns at night. Unlike most yokai, he's fully visible to humans. Despite this, he tries to stay hidden, and fails. There's his yokai medals, and I believe it is time for our next yokai. Let's be honest, you probably know this one. Kelpies are by far one of the most popular creatures in Scottish folklore, and for good reason. There's a larger amount of stories depicting it than most others, except for one in particular, but I think you know who I'm talking about. Kelpies' appearances differ in many ways, but a constant is that they're water-bound horses with a nasty habit of dragging humans into the depth and drowning them. For my yokai Kelpie, I wanted to draw from the depiction of the Kelpie being half horse with a fishtail, except instead of a fishtail, he has a wispy yokai-like ghost tail. The mane running down his back is intended to look like fish fins, just to make him a bit more aquatic. He's an A-rank yokai of the Shady tribe, and his skill, water play, is just a standard water-based skill. He appears at night near lakesides and takes the appearance of an old man. He will then cry out for help. Those who respond soon vanish. You've just seen his yokai medal, no need to dwell on that any longer, as it's time for our final yokai. The Celtic is literally perfect for a Shadow Side yokai. If you're new to Yokai Watch and don't know what a Shadow Side yokai are, they're yokai with two states, a light side, which is their more normal yokai form that they're in for the majority of their time, and then their Shadow Side, which is a monstrous version of them that draws from the actual yokai that they're based on. This is more apparent in yokai like Venoct, Toadledude and Arachnus that transform from humanoid states to the animalistic yokai they're based on. Now, the Selkie is a creature from Scottish folklore that, whilst in the water, is a perfectly normal seal. However, when embarking onto land, they shed their sealskin and become human women. As long as they have their sealskins on them, they can transform back into seals whilst in the water. I simply couldn't resist making a yokai with a light side human form and a shadow side seal based on this concept. However, I also mixed in another element. In our light side, Kelsie is a very heavily humanoid yokai who wears a tartan dress with a seal pelt tied around her waist. Take notice of her hairpins, which are actually the pipes of bagpipes. This is important, as in her shadow side she becomes a giant elephant seal with bagpipes at her throat and drums around her waist. Whilst elephant seals aren't found in Scotland, I felt they were an appropriate choice due to their loud vocalisations, as I liked the idea of the yokai sounding bagpipes by yelling. The name Kelsie is literally just Selkie rearranged, which is supposed to be a subtle nod to the Pokemon seal having a similar name. I feel I need to talk about her medals here, as Shadow Side yokai don't have any official yokai medals, so a while ago I designed my own medal type for them. And Kelsie and Sunder don't use this exact medal type, since she's both a Celtic and Shadow Side yokai, so she uses a fusion of the two. The reason I did this is because of the presence of yokai that share both the classic and Shadow Side classification, who use a similar medal design to Kelsie. She appears at dawn and dusk on cold winter days. It is said that those that hear her melody from the cliff tops will live a life of great fortune. When she inflates the bag on her throat, this yokai's bellows cause the calmest days to be thrown into an unstoppable tempest. And that about wraps things up. So I really hope you enjoyed today's video. I put quite a lot of work into it, and I really hope that next week's video turns out just as good as I think this one did. Alrighty, thank you all so much for watching, and I shall see you in the next one. Goodbye.